Okay, new pyramid. I might say period, I mean pyramid every single time. So we're starting fresh.
What's going on? I'm Scott from KONIG, and today we're going to be taking a look at Alex Martini's latest video. It's a good one. It's where he defines the wheel brand pyramid that he's kind of come up with. We're going to kind of weigh in on some of these things and let you know what we think about it. Let's get into it.
Hey, you've seen this pyramid before, right? Yeah, you've seen it. It's wrong, all right? For too long. We've seen this reposted every year, and it just comes with less and less pixels than its predecessor. So today, you and I are fixing it.
So before we get into this video, let's establish some ground rules. This is not going to be a wheel bashing or other brand bashing videos. Second, why would a wheel company even bother with this? Well, look, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been with KONIG for a long time. I'm the president of this company, and because of that, I have intimate behind-the-scenes knowledge of some of these brands, where they manufacture some different things. Now, this isn't a tell-all story, but in the past few years, we've really seen an increase in transparency, and there's even a gentleman on Instagram that I like to watch his channel just to kind of see what he's talking about, and I would say his stuff is 90% accurate. I'm looking at, all the details, and that's kind of where my 90% comes from. But with that said, I believe his name is Roy Blinn.
This is good. Alex dropped this new video. So good.
If I massacred your name, by the way, my bad. So, but with this whole thing, there's been a lot of transparency. He's been really showing a lot of manifest logs to show where things come from. And, you can have your own opinion on that. That's not my goal here today. But with Alex kind of reestablishing kind of this brand pyramid, there's a lot of things that I see here that are absolutely 100% spot on. And there's a few things that I don't know that I agree with. So I wanted to kind of give you my take on it. Not a brand hating video, but maybe there'll be some insight that maybe you get from somebody that's kind of behind the scenes in the manufacturing industry.
Starting fresh, new pyramid, less upsells, less people wanting to take your picture for $20 when you get to the corner of it, okay? This is a better pyramid. It's wider, it's huger, fresher. It's the best pyramid you've ever seen. It's just so easy to try and do that. Tier 1 though, we are gonna keep original brand label. We're just gonna put some more objective data around the superior material quality and processes, and instead say, we really want the forgings to be used of a 10 to 12,000 pound press. We want to make sure the wheels are tested in-house and have some sort of unique value proposition in its materials, or they own their own sourcing of material. The pricing of original wheels can also be as low as $1,200 because of Enki.
So his tier 1, he's saying reputable brand names. He's saying often referred to as real wheels, superior material quality, processing original designs. He's using forging, use a 10 to 12,000 pound press. I'll tell you why that's not always good indication for that. Wheels are tested in-house and have some form of unique value proposition in its materials, or that they own their own sourcing of materials. Pricing for original wheels also can be as low as $1,200, and that's where he's saying the NK gets a nod and expect to pay $1,500 used or $2,500 for a new set. So let's kind of jump back to that whole forging thing at 10 to 12,000 pound press. I think there's a misconception that the more tonnage or the more pressure, the more that you'll see a forging have strength. I do know that this gets a little confusing because even from some of the forge companies and for some of the other manufacturers that do a lot of forging, we've had some interaction with them, and they basically say there's a intended use where there's a right type of press, and they'll make anything from 4,000, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. I've even seen something slightly higher than that. But the real truth of it is there has to be this combination, because the more you compress, then you start to deal with a hardness level that can deal with a shattering or so there's a happy medium depending on the application. But I remember when this was explained to me, and we kind of have a lot of intimate knowledge and kind of working with some of the forging stuff, it was one of those things where they said, well, it's really specific to application. You want to choose the right one for the intended use. 10,000 ton press is it's 10,000 ton. But 10,000 ton press is generally the standard for a lot of motorsport forged wheels.
Tier 2, we're all good with the definition here, but the one thing we'd probably take out is the high quality material and processes, and that's because most of the wheels you'll find here are either made in Taiwan or China. If a wheel is made in Taiwan, it can be good. And if it was made in China, it can be good. The defect rate is higher from China than it is from Taiwan, and the reason for that is because of volume. Now, China outperforms Taiwan in wheel manufacturing, something fierce, and they control a major amount of this industry because China is the #1 raw aluminum producer in the world. We just got to get over that. China's not inherently bad, it's not inherently great.
So what Alex just said was China's not inherently bad, China's not inherently great. I agree with that, 1,000%, right? I think that's most areas, but I agree with that 100%. So the fact is, when it comes down to tier 2, you're going to find that a lot of the manufacturing locations that are used by these brands may have some similarity, and the reason for that is these are some of the better factories that are out there today. Why are they going to be using them? Because of the fact they want to make sure that the product they're bringing to you is as high quality and as good as they possibly can find and build. And that's really important.
Tier 3, we're making a new tier 4 to clean up some of this because there are some affordable brands that sometimes break, and there are some cheap brands that are just meant to be the lowest price humanly possible. And there's a difference between those two. So we'll move the tier 3 definition to tier 4 and kind of redefine tier 3 as value brand. Now, tier 4 gets the old tier 3 verbiage for a definition, but there's not really a change there. But I want everyone to stop thinking that just a rep design means a bad wheel. We gotta get over that, okay? You're better than that. It's like growing up thinking that the crust on bread is actually healthier for you because your dad told you. If this is the first time that you're hearing this, I'm sorry, but it's not. Also, before we dive in, let's also just get one thing straight. This is very important, okay? This is our tier list, it's my tier list. It's based on my experience, some light research, a lot of research, and probably too many late night arguments on car forums. If your favorite wheel brand ends up lower than you expected, please don't take it personal. It doesn't mean it's terrible. It just means that that's kind of how it shakes out. There's nothing wrong with that. Go drive your car, enjoy it. MagicCarMartiniWorks.com or I'm going to fire you. Let's start off with tier uno. We are putting back Volk Racing, Advan, Work, Weds, and SSR back on the tier 1 list, okay? These are all Japan-built wheels. Volk coined the 10,000-pound forge press and was the first ones to use an actual digital stress test that they would call FEA. I did remove Racing Heart as well because they aren't really around anymore. And even secondhand, the wheels aren't in the best condition. And what's something I just want to share super quick before we get into this any further. There's a lot of times when people always mention secondhand wheels as being justification for buying something real versus buying a new wheel that might be more affordable but considered a replica. Now, I do want to be super clear with this. You're probably f***ing yourself. I'm sorry, I can't swear. You're probably screwing yourself a little bit with that ideology. And here's why. If you're really trying to get the best original or best heritage style wheel that still has a good amount of functionality, you're still gonna probably be best set on getting something that's a one-piece rotary forged wheel. And the reason that I say that is this. Most of your affordable 3-piece stuff that you're looking out there for, a lot of times has been powder coated, has had new lips or new barrels put on. A lot of times the hardware is switched around. And just like a car that's got a couple different owners in its lifetime, every single time a new owner comes in to have that thing, it can get just a little bit crappier. Aftermarket wheels are the same thing. The amount of people that I see that try to save on money to get a budget set of used work wheels that have been powder coated 5-6 times, and a lot of times that powder coating can actually cause the metal, like, what do you call it? Metallurgy? Gels? Metallurgy. The metallurgy, it just doesn't sound like a word that could go together. You know what I mean? That will actually change over time as you heat treat the faces of those wheels, which can actually ruin the metal composition and the strength of the wheel. And a lot of people don't actually get into that too much. A brand new wheel, a lot of times, is almost always going to be objectively stronger than a used 2-3-piece wheel that may even be made by a very reputable company like BBS or Work.
All right, so Alex is talking about the idea that you're more often much better buying a brand new wheel, even if it's not, let's say, in that same upper tier, because by the time you get the used tier 1 wheel, if we're just using his thing, it may not be nearly as good quality-wise for you in your use as just buying something that's a tier 2, right? And again, that's if we're buying into this tier thing, but the premise there is solid. And it's because whenever you buy a used wheel, you have to accept the fact that every wheel has a life cycle. We don't know what it is, right? It's not the same as a clutch or a brake pad. Wheels are metal, they're not magic, right? So now when it comes down to wheels, there's a lot of things that owners will do. They'll powder coat them. I agree with what Alex is saying. Powder coat, I believe, for the most part, is going to be a marginal change. But remember that powder coating involves a process of reheating the wheel to bake that coating in. And whenever we're going to heat a wheel to a certain degree, we're changing the heat treating that's on a wheel. We are changing the compound and the structure of that material because we're, again, putting it through a heat cycle that's substantial. Now, do I think majority of people are safe, running them through a powder coat once? Yeah, most likely. I think it's going to be a marginal difference. But is there a difference? Well, I will tell you the heat treating process is extremely specific. It's a calculated amount of time that things are heated at. They're trying to bring temperatures down in a very calculated way.
Now, tier dos, okay? I'm just gonna get this out of the way. If you're looking for the best one here, honestly, puts Enki a run for its money in terms of value. KONIG, it's just the best. And I was actually super close to putting them in the tier 1 list just because of how long they've been doing this. I would almost say they are the best bang for buck wheel you can get, and they have a forge line now that is absolutely bang on.
As much as I want to tell you that I think we deserve to be straight up into that tier 1, using Alex's criteria and being an automotive enthusiast, I understand why maybe we're not placed into that category. But in addition to that, I also know how biased I am because of the fact that we work so hard to develop so many designs. We have in-house engineering and we go over and over and over again, and we scrap more wheel designs than we will ever produce, right? And it's not because I don't think the wheel designs are good, I do, but we put so much critique into everything that we're doing. I will tell you that inherently when people start to come at some of these wheel brands, the first thing that they're always talking about is that whole thing of replica, real, is it a copy, different things like that. I would challenge you to sit down without having any idea of what wheels are out there and start to draw a wheel. I promise you, 99 times out of 100, you will absolutely draw something that looks identical or similar to something else. And that's because there's only been a quamillion different wheel designs that have ever been produced before. Just by numbers, it starts to get into really small details. And a lot of the public looks at a wheel and they look at a 10-spoke wheel and they can't distinguish the difference between every other 10-spoke wheel. And they'll do the same thing with 5-spoke wheels and 7-spoke wheels. And so everything is so subjective. But I will tell you that we work so hard to come up with the right details and do the right things and do the engineering and FEA the crap out of a wheel. And when I say the crap out of a wheel, I'm talking about we run FEA so much with designs at different stages to try to, kind of pick up all those enhancements. And the way I can, really explain it is if you're building a car, right? Let's say, you bought injectors and fuel pumps and, turbos and all these different things. The worst thing you really can do for yourself is install everything at one time and then start your car. Because if there's a problem, you can't figure out where it came from. You have to try to diagnose all that stuff. There's also another way. The other way is to put one part on the car at a time, start it up, make sure it runs right, and then turn it off. And then if you install another part and you realize there's something wrong, you know exactly it's in something that you just touched. Very similar to the way we think about some of the engineering. We start out with designs, we get the basic principle right, we're running FEA at that stage, and then every single step of the way that we're adding detail or different things, we're rerunning FEA to try to find out how did that change the design, how did that amend how the stress is translated in different aspects. I think that's made us a much, much, much better company over the past 10 years than we've ever been before. These wheels and these designs are legit put up on, kind of as much stress and tolerance as we can to be able to make sure that they're the best wheels that we possibly can put onto the market. And I do think that that's a distinguishing factor that has been missed within this tier system, although we're not all the way through the video. I will tell you one thing that I do kind of feel between tier 1 and tier 2 that Alex didn't mention as a criteria that I think may be floating through people's heads, and that has to do with heritage and legacy. So when it comes down to some of these wheel brands, the one thing I think you could see is the majority of them are produced in Japan. And I think with Japan, they get this unfair bump and advantage because we're so obsessed in the JDM culture. The problem with that is that even some of the Japanese wheel companies do not make all their wheels in Japan, which means that they're made in different parts of the world. And that kind of brings us back to the same thing that people are always, kind of worried about American companies making wheels here or making wheels there. I'm not telling you everybody does it, and I'm not telling you all the wheels do it. I'm just telling you that it happens. And because it happens, I think using a Japanese company as a measure, or let's say, kind of the subliminal measure for how you're rating a brand, may not be necessarily fair.
When you talk about rotary forging, it requires a much different and much more expensive machine, and there really isn't one of those that is open and available for use by private label companies here in the United States. If you wanted to start up a factory that could do that, especially considering all the stuff from this year, you would need right around $10 to $15 million.
At a minimum. Look, here's the thing. I think when Alex says $10 to $15 million to set up a manufacturing, kind of procedure here in the U.S., he's not wrong. Here's the part that he's missing. Compliance, EPA, different elements of zoning. It's not really easy. Wheel production is one of those things that does require a lot of different areas. You have to have painting lines, you have CNC lines, you have to have the ability to do all the finishing work and sanding. You have to have the ability to, have some sort of mold modification little area on site that's usually equivalent to like a machine shop and some different things. You have coating lines and heat treating areas and stuff like that. And because of all those different things, there's a lot of rules and regulations that maybe are really strict here in the US, even in states maybe that would be more conservative, versus in some of these other parts of the world. And that's majority why I don't think you can ever really see wheel manufacturer come to the US in a large scale. It just would be really, really difficult, not to mention, I think, the costing. So Alex is 100% right. When you see a company say made in the US, you have to assume that they either are talking about the custom product that they're making, or that they're doing everything with a CNC, where they're just basically purchasing these blocks of aluminum or forged profiles, and then having the CNC essentially remove the material to reveal the design that they want. So that's always my thing. I mean, even with our forged wheels, we're doing them in a mass production sense. So what ends up happening is we're not making just 4 at a time. We do the development, we do the FEA, we actually make a wheel. It goes through testing on every single part number, any change that we make. It goes through that physical testing. We know that the wheel upholds everything that we did in FEA. Everything is spot on. So I would just keep in mind what you're getting and what you're doing there. But yeah, 100% custom products tend to be something that could be done here in the States because we're not doing all the processes like I mentioned before. Whereas a flow forming or casting or anything where you have a lot of the actual hard manufacturing stuff, it's not going to be done here in the US.
Now, this is where things got a little weird with some of the brands. I saw Tenzo R wheels on there, and that also got moved down, and Niche wheels got bumped down as well, which I will explain later. Again, this isn't a bad thing. We're just trying to clear the air in terms of value per objective technology invested in design. Sparco makes the cut here because they're affordable and TUV certified, which is insanely rare for a company at this price point to offer. So German folks, I'm looking out for you here. This one's for you. Now, new Tier 3. Here are the brands I got in there. Stage Wheels, Kansei, Sparco, Adahan. You may not like this one. TSW, 1552. Hard because they haven't really done much lately.
So let's go over this real quick. Niche, Motegi, MHT, Fuel, Rotiform. I'm sure that there's more than a few other ones. TSW now, Black Rhino. Some of these brands, these are all under the Wheel Pros or Hoonigan platform, which means that they're all being manufactured in the same type of way. I think it's very difficult to look at these brands individually and put them into different tier categories solely based off of quality, manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. They're all manufactured at different places all over the world, and I just think that that's public record. I think when I look at these companies, I think Alex has to be doing this primarily more by kind of the brand equity that's around that wheel and the designs and stuff like that. So just keep in mind that from a quality perspective, all those wheels are kind of in the similar category. They're not all manufactured in the same location, but they're owned by the same company and have the same engineering and design and stuff like that. So I think it just depends now where the quality comes from based off of which factory or which price they've negotiated, all those things, you know?
Now, obviously, we want to see more from some of these brands, including things like TSW, but I think you have to understand that some of these brands are getting better, while some of the big, older brands have kind of started to fade off.
So I think a lot of the reasons that some of the older brands have started to fade off has to do with just the age of the owners. The independently owned companies that I could think about when I started here 20 years ago, most of them aren't owned by their owners anymore. They're not in the family structure. They've been bought by other companies. They've kind of had that whole thing. And like, here's the thing, to an extent, we're kind of included in that, right? I don't want to exclude us from that because we're owned, and we don't hide it in any way. You can go look at pretty much most of the stuff. We're owned by a company called YHI International. They're a really large aftermarket wheel manufacturer and manufacture wheel brands for plenty of others. The difference is we are owned by them. The difference is while we're owned by them, they always kept a huge emphasis on us doing us. They don't tell us how to make wheels. They don't tell us what to produce. They don't tell us anything. Do we answer to them when it comes down to budgetary things? Absolutely, because they're a publicly traded company on the Singapore exchange. They're a Singaporean company. But at the end of the day, we have some incredible advantages that are in our arsenal of tools because we are the factory. We're owned by the factory. And being that, it allows me to basically go in and do a bunch of things that a lot of other people can't do, even if they're buying their wheels or having YHI make wheels for them. And that's because they have to deal with them as a customer, and I'm part of the family, right? I get to walk in and utilize a lot of resources. These people I've been friends with now, most of them for almost 20 years. Like, this is one of the biggest differences. And I was just in, we manufacture our wheels in different locations, but they're all YHI owned factories. And because of that, like I'll go to Taiwan or I'll go to Malaysia. And when we're there, like, these are my friends now, right? So it's not the same. I've worked with YHI, since I've been here. They did acquire a majority of the company back in 2005 from the original owner. And then by 2011, the original owner had retired, and his name was Rick. And I had the pleasure of working with him for about 6 or 7 years, and I still keep in touch with Rick. And he founded KONIG based off of just being a love for automotive and a love for automotive parts, and was one of the first wheel companies to really start making wheels in the US for these new Japanese cars that at the time, if you remember, shutting the door in an 80s Honda wasn't really a good thing. It might fall apart. So, this was a scene that wasn't getting a ton of love, and he gave that love to them, and he loved those cars, and he still loves those cars. And I'm happy that I picked up as much of the DNA from Rick to be able to keep that in the company. And I will tell you that for the past 20 years, I have never heard YHI ever tell me not to do what I felt was right. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. They just want to have cool automotive stuff, and they like the fact that they have, a wheel brand part of their portfolio, and you can go look and find all the information about the portfolio and whatever else it includes. It's all there, it's public information, but everything's done here, in-house.
Now for Tier 4. I tried to put these in order of importance, and you're gonna see that there's generally a trend here. We put Vors at the top of the Tier 4 list. It's an affordable brand. You're getting it because it's a good, cheap wheel. It gets the job done. F1R, same exact thing. If you're looking at Vox, you're probably a Miata owner. Same exact thing. I'm not saying that they're bad. They're affordable, they get the job done. However, my recommendation is that if you're trying to get something that's actually gonna behave a little bit better, I'd recommend jumping up just a little bit. MB wheels, MMR wheels, drag wheels, and Focal are gonna stay down here as well. Now, I wanna make sure that we understand that as we look at this brand new, beautiful, high resolution, 4K UHD, non-chat GPT pyramid, that you guys agree with it. Because if you don't, I'm sure you'll let me know below. And a lot of the aftermarket wheel history really did start in Japan. And over time, it also started to make its way into America as well, but because of our cost structure, it was just never really conducive to making a factory here that could be supported. There's been plenty of factories that have tried, and they've all just shut down, which means most of your stuff in the Tier 1 space is mostly going to be Japan-oriented outside of American racing wheels. So there you have it, a new pyramid that Brent is gonna kill me as he does all of this editing. But honestly, I do this for you. At the end of the day, for you and me. I love you.
You know, look, do your homework. I think there's a lot of brands there. I mean, I think that there's something to brands that have been here for a long time. I think that there's a reason that they're able to stay in business and continue to do this stuff. I will tell you that, you know, I think wheel brands and other automotive brands, they're very much, and we're very much like almost musicians, right? They have one type of music, they can't do that forever, because if they do, their music gets left behind. You gotta kind of keep reinventing yourself every so often, and there's always trends and fads that are gonna come up, and the question is, do you chase those? Do you stay true to your roots? There's a bunch of stuff. But when it comes down to this, I hope I gave a little bit more insight. That's all I really was trying to do. And go check out this video. This video is really good, and you know, it allows you to really find out a lot of stuff. Alex does a great job about bringing wheel content all the time. So make sure you go check him out. Give a big subscribe over there. And if you wouldn't mind throwing a subscribe for us, that'd be super cool, because we appreciate it and we work real hard to produce content. And you'll look at most of our content, it's not really about wheels, it's about car stuff. We have a podcast too. You know, I don't know why I told you that, but we do. So anyhow, thanks for hanging out with us. Have any questions? Throw them down below. I'll try to answer them. But just be nice and kind and subjective. Give us real questions. I'll answer them, or we'll come through and answer them. Thanks for hanging out with us. Catch you on the next one.